So here in settings, here as you can see that the identity source or the identity provider in this case is AWS single sign-on. So in this AWS single sign-on, you can create users and create groups. But as you know, that it's very hard to manage this user. So every time create user. But instead of that, what you will going to do is to change this identity source or identity provider and use AWS. You can either choose AWS Microsoft, AWS Managed Microsoft Active Directory, or choose an external provider. So in this case, our Active Directory acts our identity provider, and our single sign-on acts as our service provider. So these terms, you have to remember them very well. So the identity provider and then the service provider. The identity provider is the entity that provides us with the credentials of users, and the service provider is the service that enable us to use that entities and, for example, use them to sign in to another account or to interact with another account. So the benefit of single sign-on is to centralize the permission. As you can see here, I have created two examples with single sign-on and without single sign-on. I have covered them, both of them. Don't worry, I will explain that when I reach to it, but just I want to illustrate and show you what is the benefit of AWS single sign-on, and you will understand that very well when we start to implement that in real life. Even if I show you just the schema, it will not it will still vague for you, but once we'll start to implement, you will see that how much time it takes us to create that or to mount that user to our AWS account with and without single sign-on. Another terms I will mention in this lab is the AWS organization. This term is very important, and I highly recommend you to go to the documentation and look for it. But here I will show you only some feature of it. But if you want to go dive in it, I highly recommend you to go to the documentation of AWS, and there you will see that AWS have covered many things about that. So I highly recommend you, if you are passionate with AWS services and AWS certificates, either architects, DevOps, any of them, I highly recommend you to go to the documentation because everything is covered in details. So let me give you a scenario as I do usually, because with scenarios you understand why these things and why it's not another thing. Let me assume that you are an organization, right? An organization will not have only one account because it is an organization, so it will have many accounts. For example, this your enterprise, or yes, for example, your enterprise or your organization work in IT, and for that it has many users, and these users they belong to different categories like testers, and then we have developers, and then we have the team who products, and another team, right? So these users here, let me come here and test account, and then have development account, production account, and let me call this root account. So this root account is the root or the account of administrator. So this administrator will give users a permission in each account. So he is responsible of settings or for settings, yes, permission for user inside this account. But this user, for example, if we want after each month, you have to pay. So for example, cost, for example, this one have $10, just an estimation but not a real one. I will duplicate that here as well. So if there was no organization or there is no AWS organization, what are the problems that this root administrator will face? Is it must to go to each account, enter the credentials, then pay the cost. The same thing on the test account and the production account. But here we have assumed that we have only 3 accounts. But what if we have 20 accounts or any number you like? So it will be very hard for the user and it will be a very tough task and mission to manage all these users, right? So AWS come with a solution that is AWS organization. So instead of going to each account and try to manage it lonely, or yes, and the other one it is tried to centralize the payment. So from this root administrator you can pay all these costs for the other accounts through your root or your root administrator account. So this is the benefit of AWS organization, is to centralize the accounts, to centralize users or accounts, and then on that account you can do any operation on them. Like in this example here, as you can see in this scheme, that the AWS organization enable us to centralize all our accounts that want our user in Active Directory to interact with them. So, not like the AWS identity and access management that it use the identity provider. So you have to go on each account and then create an identity provider in the section of AWS identity and access management, and then create a role and that create an enterprise application specifically for that identity provider, because the enterprise application that you are going to create on Active Directory are not the same when we deal with single sign-on and without dealing with single sign-on. So as you can see here that our AWS organization has centralized for us all our accounts. And it became very easy to manage all these accounts only from the root or from the root administrator account. I hope that you got my point. So now what we are going to do is going to our Azure Active Directory and create an enterprise application. So we don't have any application yet, so we have to go to our new application, and here if you don't see an no gallery application, then you have to click on this word or this blue line here, and then it will take you to non-gallery application. I will click on that and give it a name and call it AWS single sign-on, and then add that application. So once our application is created,